All right. Welcome to part, I think, 3 of this video series. So our last video, we created our reducers and our actions for this the search box. So we didn't do any other fetching, none of the API stuff, none of that stuff, right? So we need to do that. That's what we're going to be taking care of in this video. Uh, so the first thing we need to do is we need to import our isomorphic fetch library, and this is the thing that allows us to make our fetch calls to the Google Books API. So we're going to be doing an import. And by the way, I installed all these packages via npm. Um, so when you're make sure you have these packages installed. I already did all this stuff before doing this video. Okay, so we're going to import fetch from isomorphic fetch. Okay, and the next thing we're going to do is we are going to set up a function right underneath of here, and this function is going to be our get books. So export const, or setting up an action rather. Alright, is equal to, and we're going to pass in the query. So, okay, so what's going to happen with this get books function is we're going to attach this action, we're going to expose this get books function to the whole app. So I'm going to expose it to the entire app, and I'm going to attach this function onto the input box. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach it to the input box, and I'm going to bind it via an on change event. So every time you type into the input box, it's sending the data from the input box into this function right here, and then it's going to make a fetch and do the other stuff. Okay. Again, arrow function ES6 syntax. All right. Now what we need to do here is we need to return, and we're going to return a dispatch, which dispatch allows us to dispatch actions in this file. So in this case, I'm going to be dispatching like the set books function in here. So I'm going to be going dispatch and then set books, and I'm going to pass in the book, like that. I'll show you in a little bit, but we need to pass in the dispatch, which is from Redux. Get state, which is the state of the whole app, and again, arrow function. Okay. And speaking of dispatch, let's go ahead and dispatch to this reducer, this set query reducer. Okay, so we're going to go dispatch. That's the first thing we're going to do is dispatch, and we're going to dispatch the set query function. Hey, remember set query takes in a parameter, and the parameter in this case is going to be the query. Okay. Okay, next, the next thing we need to do is we need to make the fetch call. So let's go fetch, using our fetch from our isomorphic fetch library, fetch, and I'm going to go to this website and copy that URL, this guy right here. So we're going to make a fetch to this URL, and this needs to be dynamic. So we need to go plus query and then we need to use then Okay, and we're going to get a response. Okay, arrow function. And in the response, we need to check the status. I'm just going to do a real quick status check. You can do all types of stuff here, but I'm just going to do a quick response check here. So I'm going to check for response status, response.status. Response is going to be an object. It's going to have all these properties in there. So it's going to be one of those properties is going to be the status. So I'm going to check to see if it's greater than or equal to 400. You don't have to do it like this. You can do your error checking in many different ways. This is not an error checking video, okay? So we're going to throw a new error here. So you could also set up like an error reducer, and then if you get a bad status or something here, you can shoot it off here. We're actually going to set up a catch block in just a second, so actually you probably should create a separate reducer that catches the error and then shoot it into the reducer and then set it on the state, and then you can do error checking based on the flag and the state. Okay, and then you want to return that response, otherwise it's not going to work. Actually, I ran into this issue. So you want to return it from this this den block. Okay, and then we're going to chain another den function, and we're going to, this is actually going to contain the actual data from the server. Alright, we're going to do something there, and then we're going to catch our error. Okay, so we're going to catch our error, and I'm just going to go I'm going to just console log it. I'm not going to set up a an error reducer for that. I'm not going to mess with that right now. Okay, what we need to do now is when you get the books back, we need to set it in the state. So again, I'm sorry, it's my iPhone going off if you hear it. We need to dispatch set books, and we're just going to pass in that books, which is just an array or a JSON array of objects. Actually, I noticed I need to get the items. So it's going to be an object, and it's going to be a property on it called items. So books dot item. So books is actually, I'm sorry, books is going to be an object, and it's going to have the items, which is the array of objects, which will have our books. I think I said that right. Okay. The next thing we need to do is, now you don't, this is optional, but I ran into this issue when I was building this. You probably should create an API key. You probably should be creating an API key and then passing that into the actual get HTTP request. The reason why you want to do this is because when I didn't have the key on there originally, I ran into some issues where the server was blocking me out because of making too many fetch calls. And if you get the API key and you have a valid API key, you send that to the server, then it doesn't lock you out as fast. So now I actually created an API key here and I exposed it, and I'm not gonna open it, but because it's my API key, so I'm gonna import API key from the auth folder and API key. All right. So like I said before, we need to pass in that API key into our uh, our fetch call. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to pass in a parameter called key. Let's call it key, and we're going to API key. There we go. That should be that should be good. That should be good. All right. One last thing before I conclude this video. What happens if the query comes back empty? You know, because that very well could happen. So I need to check to see if that query is empty in this getBooks function. If it's empty, I want to set an empty array on the state. So I'm gonna dispatch in action set books that passes in an empty array and sets that on the state. That tells me um, there was nothing. There's gonna be no results coming back here from the server. So I'm using now. You don't have to do this. I'm using Lodash, and I like it because it's elegant. So and very easy to use. You can check if it's empty, the traditional way, but I'm going to use Lodash because I like it. And there's a function called isEmpty, and we're going to be importing that from the Lodash module. Okay. So right before this fetch call here, what I need to do is I need to check to see if it's empty. So in this case, I want to fire off the fetch call if and only if the query is not empty. So if this is not empty, the query is what I'm talking about. Ternary operator. Excuse me. So if it's not empty, fire off the fetch here. Otherwise, I want to dispatch set books, and I want to just pass in an empty array that has nothing, no objects at all. Okay. And oh, I forgot one last thing. This is not going to work until you expose this. Okay, so because we're not setting reducers and stuff for it, so we need to expose this guy. So let's expose it so that way we can use it in the app. So I'm going to export the action, and in this case the action is going to be books, get books. Okay, that does it for this video. Next video we're going to be setting up a file. In this case it's going to be called search container. And the only thing we're going to do is we're going to grab all of our props. We're going to grab our action and our books in the query. So stay tuned for the next video.